Eli sat in the back corner of the classroom, where he always liked to be, quiet, calm, and unnoticed. He was the kind of student who didn't talk much. He listened. He watched, and most of the time, he understood things faster than the rest of the class. But he never showed off. He didn't like attention. That day, Mr. Harlan was teaching a math lesson about quadratic equations. He was writing numbers quickly on the board. The class was sleepy, bored, some just staring out the window. But Eli was paying attention. He leaned forward, looking at the problem Mr. Harlan just solved. Something was wrong. Eli raised his hand slowly. Mr. Harlan looked surprised. Eli rarely spoke. "Yes, Eli." Eli stood up and said gently, "Sir, I think the answer is wrong. The sign should be negative, not positive." The class turned to look. Mr. Harlan stared at the board, then at Eli. For a moment, there was silence. Then the teacher smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was tight, forced. "You think I made a mistake, Eli?" "No, sir," Eli replied, voice soft. "I just meant, maybe check it once. It didn't match the formula." Mr. Harlan's eyes narrowed. He turned back to the board, stared at the problem for a few seconds, and then said, "We're moving on. Enough interruptions." Some students giggled. A few looked confused. Eli sat down quietly. But something had changed. After class, Mr. Harlan asked Eli to stay behind. When the room was empty, Mr. Harlan walked over to him and said coldly, "You think it's smart to correct your teacher in front of the whole class." Eli looked down. "I didn't mean to disrespect you." "Well, that's how it looked," Mr. Harlan said. "Go home. You'll hear from the office tomorrow." The next day, Eli was called to the principal's office. He sat across from the vice principal, who held a form in her hand. "Eli, you've been written up for classroom disrespect," she said. "This is your first warning, but Mr. Harlan feels it was serious. You'll be suspended for 1 day." Eli blinked. For saying the answer was wrong. She looked uncomfortable. Sometimes tone matters more than words. Eli nodded silently. He went home early that day. His mother, Tanya, was waiting at the door. "What happened?" she asked. Eli handed her the suspension notice. She read it twice. "This doesn't make sense. You don't talk back to teachers. What really happened?" "I corrected a math problem," Eli said. "That's it. That's it." She looked at him. "And they suspended you for that?" Eli shrugged. "It's okay, Mom." "No, it's not." But Eli had already started walking to his room. Just before he closed the door, he paused. "They made a mistake," he said softly. "A big one." Tanya stood in the hallway, confused and worried. Eli wasn't angry. He wasn't crying. He just seemed calm. Too calm. In his room, Eli sat at his desk. He opened the bottom drawer and pulled out a locked case. From it, he took out a small device, a USB drive. He plugged it into his laptop and opened a folder full of documents, videos, and code. His eyes scanned the files. For the first time in days, Eli smiled. "They want to play unfair," he whispered. "Let's show them what fair really looks like." Eli didn't talk much, but he thought deeply. Most students at school didn't know much about him. They only saw the quiet kid who sat in the back of every class. They didn't know what he did at home. They didn't know how fast his mind worked. But his mother, Tanya, knew. She remembered when Eli was only 9 years old. He had built a small robot from broken toys and old wires. It moved across the kitchen floor and spoke simple words. He called it Buddy. That day, she knew her son was different. Not just smart, special. But Eli never wanted attention. He never showed off. He didn't care about trophies or school awards. He just wanted to fix things. Now, sitting in his room with his laptop open, Eli was planning to fix something bigger, something broken inside the school. He opened a file on his computer labeled Truth_Project. Inside it were recordings, videos from the school hallways, copies of emails, screenshots of grades. Eli had collected everything over the past year. Why? Because he had seen unfair things happen before. One student was suspended for asking why the lunch machines gave wrong change. Another was punished for asking about old textbooks. Eli had started watching, listening, saving. Now they had punished him too, for pointing out a simple math mistake. And something inside him said, enough. Meanwhile, in the living room, Tanya sat on the couch with the suspension notice in her hand. She was angry, confused, and worried. "This isn't about math," she whispered. "This is about pride." That teacher didn't like being corrected. She picked up her phone and called the school. But the receptionist only said, "You'll have to speak with the board next week." The decision was already made. She hung up, frustrated. Back in his room, Eli began building something. A simple website. No names, no faces, just facts. He uploaded Mr. Harlan's lesson video, taken from a school recording, and pointed out the exact math error. Then he added a quiet voiceover, his own voice. "I didn't mean to embarrass anyone. I just thought it was right to speak, but maybe truth has a cost." Then he clicked publish. The next morning, students started sharing a strange link on their phones. "Did you see this? Isn't that from our school? Wait, that's Mr. Harlan's class." By lunch, almost every student had seen it. The video didn't attack anyone. It didn't even say a teacher's name, but it showed one thing clearly. A kid had been punished for telling the truth. Some students were angry. Some were confused. Some felt guilty. They had laughed when Mr. Harlan snapped at Eli. Even some teachers whispered about it in the staff room. That evening, a teacher from a different school, Miss Carter, saw the video online. She watched it twice. Then she froze. She remembered the name Eli Ross. 2 years ago, she had been a judge at a national science fair. A 13-year-old boy had presented a project on AI and fairness in education. His idea had been far ahead of anything she had seen. That boy was Eli. She picked up her phone. "This boy," she told a journalist friend, "has something to say, and I think it's time the world listens." By morning, Eli's quiet video had spread far beyond his school. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was honest. And maybe that's why it hit harder. The video simply showed facts. A math problem, a correction, a punishment. No faces were shown. No names were spoken. But students at his school knew the truth. And now, so did others. Within 24 hours, the video had been shared over 3,000 times. Some students started talking. Some started questioning. And some started remembering. A girl named Sarah, 1 grade above Eli, posted a message on the same website. "Mr. Harlan gave me detention for asking about a mistake on my test. He said I was accusing him. I stayed silent. But now I see. I wasn't alone." Another message appeared. "This isn't about just one teacher. It's about fear, about students being scared to speak up." Then another. "Thank you, whoever you are. You're not just helping yourself. You're helping all of us." Eli sat in his room, reading every single word. He didn't smile. He didn't cry. He just sat still, letting it all sink in. He never planned for it to go this far. But now it had. And part of him knew this wasn't just about school anymore. At school, Mr. Harlan was losing control of his class. Students whispered behind his back. Some avoided his class entirely. He called a staff meeting. "This is getting out of hand," he said. "Someone is spreading false information." But one of the younger teachers, Ms. Raymond, looked at him carefully. "Is it false?" she asked. "Because I watched the video. It looked pretty clear to me." Mr. Harlan's face turned red. "We don't need division among staff. We need unity." But the room was silent. Even the principal seemed unsure. Back at home, Tanya got a phone call. It was from a journalist. Is your son Eli Ross? The woman asked. Tanya hesitated. Yes. Why? I saw his video. We're covering a story on truth in schools. We'd like to speak with him. Tanya was shocked. He's only 15. The voice on the phone was calm but serious. Yes, but his voice is louder than most adults. That night, Eli sat with his mom on the couch. She showed him the emails, the calls, the growing attention. This is your choice, Eli, she said. You don't have to speak if you're not ready. Eli looked at the screen. Dozens of messages, some thanking him, some begging him to keep going. He looked at his mom and said quietly, "They told me I was wrong for standing up." He paused. "But if I stop now, maybe I am." Meanwhile, the school board met behind closed doors. They had seen the video, and they had questions. Why was this student suspended? Why did no one look into it? What else is happening in our classrooms? By the next morning, the school received a notice. An official investigation had been launched, not just into one teacher, but into the system, and the boy who started it all, still sitting quietly in the back of class. But now, everyone was watching. The classroom felt different now. Eli sat in the same seat, same desk, same books. But this time, eyes followed him, not with laughter or judgment, but with quiet respect. Even students who had never spoken to him before now looked at him differently. Some nodded when he walked past. Some gave him small smiles. One even whispered, "Thank you." Mr. Harlan, however, was not smiling. He stood in front of the class, pretending everything was normal. But his voice was sharp, his tone colder than usual. "Open your books," he said. "We have a lesson to finish." But when he turned around to write on the board, someone raised their hand. It was Mia, a shy girl who usually never spoke in class. "Sir," she said quietly, "the example on the board, it's wrong." The room froze. Mr. Harlan turned slowly. He stared at her, then at Eli. And for the first time, he said nothing, just erased the board. In the staff room, teachers whispered. Some defended Mr. Harlan. Others were tired of covering for him. But the truth was out, and more stories were coming forward. Not just from Ely School, from other schools too. Students were sending messages. Teachers were speaking up. Something was happening, and no one could stop it now. Meanwhile, Eli sat at home, looking at a message on his screen. It was from someone he didn't expect. A school board member. "Eli, your video has started a conversation we should have had a long time ago. We'd like you to speak at the upcoming meeting, only if you're ready." Tanya read it too. Her hands were shaking. "Eli, this is big," she said softly. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Eli nodded slowly. He had always been quiet, always stayed in the background. But now something had changed. He wasn't just fixing a math mistake. He was helping fix a broken system. The night before the meeting, Eli couldn't sleep. He looked at his old science project trophies, his books, his laptop. Then he looked in the mirror. "I'm not doing this for revenge," he whispered to himself. "I'm doing this because it's right." The next day, the school board meeting hall was full. Teachers, parents, students, even news cameras. Mr. Harlan sat in the back row, arms crossed, jaw tight. Then Eli stepped up to the microphone. The room went silent. He looked nervous, small, just a 15-year-old boy. But when he spoke, his voice was calm. "I didn't mean to start a movement," Eli began. "I just saw something that was wrong. I thought, if I said something, someone would fix it." He paused, then continued. "But instead, I was punished. Not for being rude, not for lying, just for being right." Whispers moved through the crowd. "But I learned something," Eli said. "Truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to stand." He stepped down, and for a moment, silence. Then someone clapped. Then another. Then the whole room stood up. Even teachers had tears in their eyes. Mr. Harlan stayed seated, but his face said everything. He knew. This time, he wouldn't walk away so easily. After the school board meeting, everything began to change. The video of Eli's speech went viral, not just in their town, but in schools across the country. People called him brave. Some called him a leader. But Eli still felt like the same quiet boy. He just spoke the truth. He didn't want fame. He wanted fairness. Back at school, students were no longer afraid to raise their hands. They asked questions. They corrected mistakes. They spoke up when something felt wrong. And for the first time in years, teachers began listening. Even some of the strict ones started to soften, but not Mr. Harlan. Mr. Harlan avoided Eli. He kept his head low. But behind closed doors, he was angry. He blamed Eli for everything. For the meetings, for the investigation, for the attention. He walked into the principal's office one morning with a red face and trembling voice. "This is all nonsense," he shouted. "One kid makes a video, and suddenly I'm the villain." But the principal stayed calm. "Mr. Harlan," he said quietly, "this isn't just about one kid." He slid a folder across the desk. Inside were statements, emails, complaints, going back years. Some were signed. Some were anonymous. All of them pointed in one direction: abuse of power. That same day, a reporter reached out to Tanya again. "We found something," she said. "Would Eli speak to us one more time?" Tanya looked at Eli. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he asked, "What did you find?" The reporter hesitated, then replied, "There's more to this story than just your school. We believe Mr. Harlan has been moving between schools every few years, always leaving quietly." Eli's eyes widened. "You mean this has happened before?" "Yes," she said. And no one stopped him. Eli sat in his room, thinking about it all. He wasn't angry. He was sad. Sad for the kids who were punished for speaking up. Sad for the ones who never got to speak at all. He opened his laptop and began typing. A letter. Not to the school, not to the news, but to every student out there who had been silenced. "Dear student who's afraid to speak, I know it's scary. I know it feels like no one will believe you. But your voice matters. It really does. I used to think staying quiet was the safest choice. But sometimes silence lets the wrong people win. So if you ever see something wrong, even something small, speak. Because one voice can echo louder than you think." He hit post. And just like before, the world listened. Meanwhile, the school board made its decision. Mr. Harlan was suspended, pending a deeper investigation. The news was quiet, clean, formal. But inside the school halls, it meant something powerful. The system had listened, and it had finally said, enough. Eli didn't celebrate. He didn't dance. He simply packed his backpack and got ready for another day. His mom hugged him at the door. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded, then smiled. "I think I finally am." The school was quieter after Mr. Harlan left. No yelling in the halls. No fear in the classrooms. For the first time, students felt safe to be themselves. But outside the school walls, the storm was growing. Eli's letter had reached more than just students. Parents started asking questions. Teachers in other cities began sharing their stories. A teacher from another town wrote online, "I stayed silent for years because I thought no one would believe me. After seeing Eli's story, I finally spoke up." One voice had become many. And those voices were loud. Back in Eli's school, a group of students met during lunch. Not to gossip, not to play, but to create change. They called themselves the Echo Club, a place where anyone could talk about problems safely. Eli didn't lead it. He didn't want to. But he showed up. He listened. He supported. That was enough. One afternoon, the principal walked into the classroom with an announcement. He looked nervous, but hopeful. "We've decided to review how we handle complaints," he said. "From now on, students will have a voice in the process." Gasps filled the room. Students looked at one another, surprised. It was a small change, but a powerful one. That night, Eli sat on the roof, staring at the stars. Tanya joined him, wrapping a blanket around them both. "You changed everything," she whispered. Eli shook his head. "Not me," he said. "The truth did, but not everyone was happy." In a nearby district, another teacher, known for similar behavior as Mr. Harlan, was placed under review. Suddenly, schools were under pressure to clean up. Some supported the changes. Others fought back, saying students were getting too bold. The line was being drawn, and Eli was right in the middle of it. One day, a stranger showed up outside Eli's school. He was tall, well-dressed, and calm. He introduced himself as Mr. Dyer, a representative from the Department of Education. He asked for a meeting with Eli and the principal. In the meeting, Mr. Dyer spoke softly. "You may not know this," he said to Eli, "but your story has started something bigger than we expected." He opened a file. In the last month, 413 complaints were filed by students across the state. That's more than the entire year before. The room was silent. Mr. Dyer leaned forward. "And we want your help, Eli. Not to speak for everyone, but to help us listen." Eli's eyes widened. "Me? I'm just a student." Mr. Dyer smiled. "Exactly. That's why they'll trust you." That night, Eli stood at the edge of something huge. He had never asked for any of this. He had only corrected a math error. But that simple act had opened a door. Now the world was waiting to see what he would do next. And Eli was ready to step through. Weeks passed. But Eli's name didn't fade. He wasn't chasing fame. He wasn't looking for praise. He just wanted the truth to matter. And now, it finally did. With help from Mr. Dyer, Eli joined a student panel. They traveled to different schools, listening to students, sharing ideas, and creating safer spaces to speak up. Eli didn't give long speeches. He listened more than he talked. But when he did speak, people listened. Because Eli spoke from the heart. One afternoon, while visiting a school in another city, a girl raised her hand. She looked nervous. Her voice shook. "I was suspended last year, just for crying in class. My teacher said I was making a scene." The room went quiet. Eli stood up slowly. He walked over, knelt beside her, and said, "That wasn't your fault. Feeling something isn't wrong, and speaking up about it takes real strength." Tears filled her eyes, and for the first time she smiled. Back at Eli's school, the Echo Club was growing. Students from different grades joined. Even teachers sat in now, ready to listen, not control. One day, the new math teacher asked Eli to help co-teach a lesson. Eli paused, then smiled. "Sure," he said, "but just don't give me the wrong answer." The class laughed. So did the teacher. The room felt lighter. Mr. Harlan's case finally closed. The board announced he would never teach again. It wasn't just about punishment. It was about making sure no one else would be hurt by his pride and anger. Justice didn't come loudly. It came quietly, with truth. That night, Tanya placed a small envelope on Eli's bed. Inside was a letter. Not from a teacher, not from the school, but from a boy in another state. "Dear Eli, I wanted to end my life last month. I felt like no one cared. But then I watched your video, and I saw how one quiet kid changed everything. You made me believe I matter. Thank you for saving me." Eli stared at the letter for a long time. He folded it carefully and placed it in a box filled with letters, drawings, and words from people all over the country. Each one a reminder. One voice matters, even when it's quiet. As graduation neared, the principal gave a final surprise. He invited Eli to the stage during the senior assembly. With a microphone in his hand and the whole school watching, Eli said just 2 words, "Speak up." The crowd stood in silence. And then they clapped. Loud, long, real. Eli wasn't just the boy who pointed out a math mistake anymore. He was the boy who corrected something much bigger. A system, a mindset, a silence.